Captain Edward Hilliard's War Journal, February the 16th, 1918. I listened to Sergeant Norris's screams as he lay there bleeding in the ice-covered shell hole 10 yards in front of me, and there was nothing I nor anyone could do but pity him. If any one of us moved, we would be dead in seconds, filled with lead from the guns of the German snipers who were watching us from across the frozen waste of no man's land. I looked along the line of men, shivering from the cold, huddled together for warmth as they crouched, tired and scared, against the walls of the trench, less than 100 yards away from our enemy. Sergeant Major Harris came stumbling over them as he made his way towards me, followed by an evil-looking black rat that had grown fat and bloated on the corpses of men that littered the battlefields of France. I was 18 when I signed up for officer training in September 1915, and here I am, nearly 2 years later, a captain. I'm standing in a trench on the Somme. In the trenches, it doesn't matter how brave or scared we are, or whether we're complacent or stupid, for at any time a stray mortar or a gas canister fired from the enemy lines could drop into our trench and send us to oblivion. I looked through the periscope and watched another rat as it nimbly skipped across the mud and landed on Norris's helmet. Norris screamed in pain and fear as the rat unhurriedly leant over and took a bite of flesh from his face. After 2 years, we have become immune to the screams of the injured and dying, crying out for their mothers or their loved ones, their bodies racked with pain and fear as their life oozes from their wounds, dribbling down over the slimy mud to mingle with the stagnant water of the puddles that litter the field, and every morning hundreds more are sent to their death. Usually by late afternoon most of their cries have ceased, and the fields once again fall into uneasy silence. 10 yards. Through this periscope I could see a way to reach him. 10 yards. We'd been together for 2 years. 10 yards. He was my friend. I had to try. "Sergeant Major," I shouted. "Sir!" "I need you to create a diversion for me. I need you to divert the Germans' attention away from here. Think you can do it?" "Yes, sir," he said, saluting me. He took 2 men and together they made their way along the trench until they were about 50 yards away. "Corporal Jennings, as soon as Harris starts his diversion, I need you to help me up." "What?" "I'm going to get Norris," I told him. "Be ready." Keeping my head down, I slithered through the freezing ice, feeling it soaking through my filthy uniform. I heard bullets whistling over my head, but there was a shallow dip in the mud, and I was low enough to remain partially hidden as I slowly made my way to where Norris lay. It was only yards, but my elbows ached from the cold and the effort of crawling. My heart pounded painfully in my chest from fear. I was engulfed by the foul stench of rotting flesh, and I didn't stop to wonder what exactly it was I was crawling through. The rat that had been feasting off Norris's left ear screeched at me as I swatted at it, and it slinked angrily away to find something else on which to feast. Blood seeped from a wound on Norris's left shoulder. His face was pale, and it seemed as though he was sleeping when I reached him. He had lost a lot of blood, and his breathing was laboured, and I guessed he had passed out from the pain. I felt a tingling in my stomach. I was only 10 yards from safety, but it might as well have been a mile. I had a fallen comrade who was badly injured and barely conscious, and there were 100 or so rifles waiting for me to make my move so they could dispatch us both to our Maker. The next decisions I made would determine whether we lived or died, and I anxiously looked around the crater. 3 corpses lay half sunk in the mud and covered by a thin, white layer of frost. Keeping myself low, I wrestled 2 of them to the edge of the pit facing the enemy to act as cover. Immediately, I heard a thwack, thwack as a couple of bullets thudded into the cadavers, reminding me that the Germans were alert to my presence. I shook Norris awake, and he cried out in pain. "Listen, Sergeant," I said. "I'm going to try and get you back to the trench." "They'll kill us." His breath came in gasps as he struggled for air. "Save your breath," I told him. "We'll get back, I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep." whispered, and I determined to make it back safely. I'm going to lay this soldier on top of you, I explained. All you have to do is hold on to him. Just grab him under the armpits. I'll grab you the same way, and that way we can both keep down and I can drag you back to safety. In truth, I wasn't sure whether this was going to work, but I had to try. It was my only plan. Those two bodies up there will afford us enough cover, and any stray bullets will hit this chap rather than you or me, okay? Ready? It won't work. It will, I assured him again, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. Just hold on to this. I dropped the third dead soldier on top of him, and he squealed in surprise and pain. I fixed his hands under the arms of the corpse, then gathered myself behind him, placed my hands under his armpits, dug my heels in, and pulled. For a moment it seemed as though he was well and truly stuck in the thick, wet mud, and he screamed as I pulled harder, momentarily forgetting about the wound in his shoulder. There was a loud slurping noise as the mud relinquished its hold on him, and I fell back heavily with both Norris and the corpse on top of me. "Sorry," I said, and as he gasped in pain. For a moment I was stuck beneath both of them. The mud was too slippery for me to free myself, and I was struggling to get a foothold. Finally, my kicking and struggling found purchase, and I was sliding slowly back towards the trench, dragging Norris along with me. He held on to the dead soldier, and I could feel the gentle thud of bullets as they ripped harmlessly into the dead flesh. I made painfully slow progress. I was slipping and sliding through the waterlogged mud, occasionally getting stuck. A few times I felt panic rising, but each time I managed to get control of myself, repeating over and over that I was nearly there, nearly safe, and that Norris was going to live because of me. Eventually, I felt hands grab me from behind as I reached the trench, and my men pulled me and Norris in. Once the stretcher team had carried Norris away, Harris turned to me, stood to attention, and saluted. "With respect, Captain Hilliard, sir," he said, "that was abso-fucking-lutely stupid. I may go as far as to say it was probably one of the stupidest actions I have seen in this war. But may I be the first to congratulate you on your bravery. I only hope it pays off and Sergeant Norris lives to thank you himself." And with that he smiled and shook my hand. "Thank you, Sergeant Major. It wasn't bravery. I was shit scared out there, but I couldn't just stand by and let one of my sergeants die if there was any chance to save him. It's what any captain would have done. Besides, he's my friend." "With respect, sir, it isn't what any captain would have done. Many would have left him there to die. Some might have thought about putting him out of his misery with a bullet from their own gun, and no one would have blamed them for doing so. War is an ugly business and calls for ugly actions." "Well, damn this bloody war then," I said, and tried to light a cigarette. But my hand was shaking so much, and I couldn't hold the lighter still. So Sergeant Major Harris lit one for me and stuck it into my mouth. "Thanks," I said, inhaling the smoke deep into my lungs and feeling the nicotine surge through my veins, calming me as it did so.